Recording in progress.
Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission this Wednesday evening, December 11th. I now call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. We don't have any virtual meeting participation requested, so skip that. And we are excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to still participate virtually. For those attending in person, complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you will be called on at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for that specific item. Clerk, please read the consent calendar. I think that's new for us.
Approve the minutes of the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission meeting of November 13th, 2024.
Is there any member of the commission who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Great. If any members of the public who wish to comment on any consent calendar item, now would be the time to make your comment. Anyone online or? Okay, great.
No.
Move approval of the minutes.
Great. Roll call or?
Commissioner Robbins,
Aye.
Commissioner Kranz,
Here.
Commissioner Rowinski,
Aye.
Vice Chair Michael,
Aye.
and Chair Narita is absent and excused.
Oh, did we
4-0.
forget to do roll call?
Yep, I think
Missed it.
Jump to the chase there.
Oops, sorry. Yeah.
Why sure they're going to say aye or he?
Right.
So I just said aye.
Did you want to still do roll call or? Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Robbins,
Can't hide now. I'm here.
Commissioner Kranz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rowinski,
Here.
Vice Chair Michael,
Here.
and Chair Narita is absent and excused.
Great. Thank you. Sorry about that. So for next on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda may address the commission at this time. State law prevents the commission from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. This public comment section is generally limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, that is subject to commission's discretion and can be extended if commission wishes to do so.
Madam Vice Chair, we have one person in council and one online.
Great. Okay. I'll just add the one more note on the script. We welcome speakers providing public comment, but please be advised this is a limited public forum. As such, speakers must stay on topic if speaking to a particular agenda item, and if speaking during general public comment, they must address matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. If speakers fail to follow these rules, they will be warned, and if they continue to disregard our rules, their opportunity to speak will be ended. Should we go ahead with our speaker in person?
Allison McQueen.
Hi, good evening. Sorry, thank you. I'm with the City of San Mateo Safe Routes to School Committee. San Mateo has adopted Vision Zero and supports safe routes to school. We're not close to either goal, as we've had multiple deaths and serious pedestrian and cyclist injuries in our city this fall and recent years. However, every project, big or small, crosswalks, daylighting, leading pedestrian indicator, every bike lane, is progress towards Vision Zero and safe routes to school in San Mateo. Just 2 days ago, on Monday, in Belmont, a student on a scooter crossing the street near Notre Dame High School was struck by a person driving a vehicle. Warning, I have a photo that's very jarring of the vehicle involved in the accident. Half of the windshield is smashed, and there is a hole where a child's body, we assume, made impact with the windshield. What would this student say if they were here tonight? I was just trying to get where I wanted to go safely. Is that too much to ask? Safe Streets advocates are working really hard so that these kinds of crashes don't happen in our city, not on our watch. However, as of late, it feels like the city of San Mateo isn't putting public safety at the top of the list. Just this week, the long-awaited 3rd and Norfolk Safety Project was removed from the City Council consent calendar at the last minute after 15 months of public outreach and planning. As I've said before, by public comment, this intersection is a death trap for pedestrians and cyclists, and we need these improvements as soon as possible. DPW created a thoughtfully designed project that took input from all community stakeholders, and the plan thoughtfully balances the needs of vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists. 3rd and Norfolk is a vital route to 8 schools in San Mateo, the Bay Trail, and San Mateo downtown and Caltrain. Number 2, I'd also like to bring up the Humboldt Street bike lanes near San Mateo High and College Park, soon to be Fiesta Gardens Neighborhood School next school year. Per data from the city of San Mateo, the bike lanes are seeing approximately 10,000 bicycle trips per month. The proposal to convert Humboldt into a bicycle boulevard is using the wrong words. Bicycle boulevards are really vehicle boulevards where bicycles ride in the midst of vehicle traffic. I, a seasoned cyclist, will not bike on a vehicle boulevard on Humboldt, and my children won't bike to San Mateo High on a vehicle boulevard in a few years. If Humboldt is converted from separated bike lanes to bicycle boulevard, many of those 10,000 bicycle trips will convert back to car trips and will lead to increased vehicle congestion and congestion and increased needs for parking. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And the speaker online?
Mike Swire, go ahead, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. Hey, thank you, members of the committee, for your service. Happy holidays. Real quick, thank you to Chair Narita. I know she's not there, but I think she did a great job last time you met regarding calling out the Transportation Authority for making sure that it considered greenhouse gas emissions, as well as really monitoring the progress of projects and reducing congestion, which is what the taxpayers were told that the purpose was. It's tough following Allison. I want to reiterate what she did. Tomorrow, what I'm doing is I'm going to a ghost bike ceremony. Ghost bike ceremony is a ceremony whereby members of the Safe Streets community put up a bike in the location of a cyclist who has died. And this happened about a month ago on Holly Street in San Carlos, which was acknowledged by the city staff as a very dangerous intersection and the site of frequent crashes and/or deaths. The city had a plan for fixing that. In 2019, it was shovel ready, but the project was killed, per Mayor Dugan, by the 101 widening, which took priority. In the process, the city of San Carlos lost all of its grant money and is now back to scratch. And now finally we have a person that has died. So what we did is we presented the ghost bike to the Transportation Authority. We didn't want to do that, but we figured that unfortunately, until somebody dies, nobody really pays attention. And we've had 2 deaths in San Mateo in the last 2 months. We put another person in critical care. We had a person put in a coma on Humboldt. I don't want to have to present a ghost bike to the San Mateo City Council or to the SIT, assuming we rip out the Humboldt bike lanes, as seems to be the preference for the city of San Mateo. I'll mention the council too, but I encourage the SIC basically to revisit the issue. You guys voted 5-0 in favor of the bike lanes, assuming they install the parking supply programs, which they did for the most part. There's still other ones, honestly, that they have not done. So my question is, why is that not happening first? But you guys have a lot of history when it comes to the bike lanes and received the presentations on the community support for the bike lanes, especially broadly across the entire city, not just in that location. You also understood that parking was difficult, but not impossible in that neighborhood prior to removing some of the parking. So I really am upset that the city seems to be fast tracking this towards a January 21st council meeting where the Sustainability Committee, i.e. the stewards of infrastructure and sustainability and safe streets for the community, is not taking another look at that, especially given your experience. So I would call on you guys to ask the city council to slow down. Let's look at the data. As Allison said, plenty of people are riding there, and let's take a wholehearted look at this before we go and rip out a project that only 2 years ago was installed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments?
No.
Okay, great. And we'll move down our agenda to now review for the new construction reach codes for the 2022 code cycle with presenter Andrea Chow. Go ahead when you're ready. Thank you, Andrea.
All right. Here we go. Good evening, Vice Chair Michael, members of the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission, and the public. My name is Andrea Chow, the Sustainability Analyst for the city, and I've had the pleasure of working with Peninsula Clean Energy and their consultant TRC on developing reach codes. Tonight, I am accompanied by Farhad from TRC, who's available remotely, to present to you on new construction reach codes for the 2022 code cycle. My presentation tonight will provide background on reach codes in general, the city's reach codes that are, and the impacts of a federal court decision that has made the city pause enforcement of the city's adopted reach codes. I'll update the commission on council's direction on a replacement reach code, present the proposed ordinance, as well as provide discussion of implementation and impact of the proposed ordinance, and on top of that, also contextualized with other decarbonization efforts for 2025. So every 3 years, the California Building Standards Commission updates the building code. We're currently more than midway through the 2022 code cycle that will end December 31st, 2025. At any time, jurisdictions may adopt a local amendment, and when we do local amendments to the state energy code or green building code, we often refer to them as reach codes. The adoption of reach codes is an important strategy for meeting the city's climate action plan goals and for reducing greenhouse gas emissions from our buildings and transportation. And reach codes allow cities to be local leaders in climate solutions, and the city of San Mateo has a strong history of adopting reach codes to meet our climate goals. For the 2022 code cycle, the city adopted multiple types of local amendments. These include ones for requiring all electric new construction, enhanced electric vehicle charging infrastructure for new construction, as well as electric readiness and electric appliances during specific residential building remodels. So focusing in on the city's all-electric requirement, an all-electric building has electric appliances for space and water heating, clothes drying, and cooking. By avoiding the use of natural gas, an all-electric building has a smaller carbon footprint because electricity in our region has become cleaner and more renewable. In the last 5 years, more than 70 cities have adopted local regulations requiring new construction to be all electric. The city of Berkeley was notably one of the first. In April 2023, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in California Restaurant Association versus the city of Berkeley determined that a local ordinance that generally prohibited the installation of natural gas infrastructure was preempted by federal law. Berkeley sought rehearing, but they were denied the request as of January 2024. And so due to this federal court case, the city's current reach codes cannot be enforced. And I'm sorry, let me specify. The city's current reach codes that require all electric new construction as well as require electric appliances during specific residential renovations. The enforcement of these REACH codes are suspended. The city's REACH codes that require enhanced electric vehicle charging infrastructure and electric readiness during residential remodels, those were not impacted by the federal court decision. So staff identified increasing building energy performance requirements through local amendments to the energy code as an alternative approach to conform to the EPCA preemption standards set by the court. PCE led the development of an energy performance REACH code model ordinance to support cities in its adoption. And at the October 7th City Council meeting, staff presented this REACH code approach to replace the city's suspended REACH code for new construction and asked for council feedback. And the City Council was supportive of the energy performance REACH code approach and directed staff to bring back an ordinance for council consideration. Across the state, we've seen cities adopt the energy performance REACH code for this code cycle. I'm going to name a few specifically in our region, so Palo Alto, Brisbane, San Jose, Burlingame, and San Mateo County very recently. And so as per our typical REACH code process, I'm asking this commission to recommend City Council approval of this ordinance prior to going to City Council. So the proposed ordinance contains amendments to both the Energy Code and the Green Building Code to meet the council's direction, and I'm going to go over those components in the following slides, starting with the Energy Code amendment that contains the energy performance standards for new construction. So the Energy Code establishes whole building efficiency requirements, which account for water heating, HVAC, solar, insulation, and more. The Energy Code also contains a prescriptive and performance pathway for each building type, and this allows builders some choices in how to meet the Energy Code requirements. What the Energy Performance REACH code primarily does is amend that performance pathway, and it applies higher standards and compliance margins on specific metrics, to name one, source energy, and this is with the goal of reducing emissions from new buildings. So this slide shows the compliance margins that are proposed in the ordinance by building type, and you'll notice there's two different metrics being referred to in the table, but for single family, there is an EDR1 score margin, and then for the other buildings, there are source energy compliance margins that are in percentage form. By increasing these requirements, the result is a decrease in emissions from the newly constructed buildings. And then without getting too into the weeds, source energy is a carbon-based performance metric. And for single-family homes, source energy is one of 3 energy design ratings, or EDR1. And if you have more specific questions, Farhad is available to answer those during the questions and answers period. And then I'll also highlight that ADUs are exempt from the REACH code requirements in alignment with state legislation of aiming to protect and streamline ADU development, wanted to avoid any restrictions or perceived barriers to ADUs. So to meet the higher standards proposed in the REACH codes, new construction or new buildings can opt to use just electric appliances, or they can opt to use gas systems. So this slide is really trying to show that you are able to meet the compliance margins with multiple types of equipment. The scenario on the left is the base case in which we're comparing to, but to achieve an EDR score of 9, you can simply use electric space heating and electric water heating to meet that score. If you want to build a new single-family home with gas space heating and gas water heating, you'll also need to use increased efficiency measures, increased solar size, and battery storage to reach that compliance margin. And with all of these options, to use all electric or gas appliances, there are cost-effective pathways to meet those compliance margins. And I also want to highlight that you can meet these compliance margins without requiring appliances that exceed federal efficiency standards. So we're very careful about preemption with this REACH code approach. So the California Energy Commission requires any local amendments to the energy code that affect energy use to be cost effective. So that is very essential to developing a REACH code, ensuring that we're taking into consideration, greenhouse gas emission reduction, but also cost impacts. So in support of REACH code development, the statewide utility program developed and published multiple studies that cover all building types and all climate zones. And all of that cost-effective analysis helps support the development of this ordinance. I'm going to walk through a single-family example, and I've demonstrated so on this slide to show the cost-effectiveness of a single-family home, kind of using the examples I showed on the previous slide. But essentially, if you build an all-electric building and meet that EDR1 compliance margin of 9 and use electric equipment, this homeowner is actually seeing $4,900 savings in upfront construction compared to the scenario where there's no REACH code requirements and you're building a mixed fuel base case home. And then on the right side, you see that when you have a mixed fuel home and you have to add efficiency, increase PV, and battery, that builder is going to see that there are more upfront costs in terms of construction, $8,700, compared to the mixed fuel baseline case. But even with the higher upfront costs, the mixed fuel home still achieves cost effectiveness because of the bill savings over 30 years. So it is still considered cost effective. So this is really just walking through, there are multiple pathways to meet compliance, the compliance margins in the ordinance, and there are cost-effective pathways to do so. The ordinance also contains expanded electric readiness requirements for buildings that include natural gas in their design. And the electric readiness requirements are actually going to be mandatory in the 2025 Energy Code. So what this ordinance is really looking to do is to pull in some electric readiness requirements that builders will see as mandatory requirements in 2025. And I think what's really important about the readiness requirements is that it's far less costly to do this type of work during initial construction than to retrofit buildings later to support electric equipment. So we're mindful that we're preparing building owners for the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's ruling around zero NOx equipment. So water heating in 2027 and space heating in 2029. So we're really signaling, put in electric readiness now if you're opting to use gas, so you're a little better prepared. And then moving on to the green building side, the ordinance repeals the enforceable components of the city's REACH code. So again, that's the all-electric new construction requirement and the provisions that prohibit the installation of gas infrastructure during our residential renovations. So those are repealed. And then in addition, staff recommends this REACH code perform one minor edit, and that's to increase consistency. Essentially, we'd like to alter the code so that it requires an outlet within 3 feet of appliance installation instead of 6 feet of appliance installation during kitchen and laundry areas. And this is just for consistency with the 2022 energy code that's being enforced right now for the 2022 new construction energy code. So just bringing more alignment. And this table highlights the changes that we'll see in the energy code from the 22 energy code to the 2025 energy code, and this is specifically for climate zone 3. So the green cells highlight where electric equipment is prescriptively required by the code. And so for single family and multifamily space heating, that is required for the 2022 energy code. And we'll see that in 2025 as well. And then you kind of see a change in water heating for single family in the 2025 code. But this hopefully just gives you a sense of how the 2022 code will change in 2025, but our ordinance will amend the 2022 energy code. Okay, so For context, the city of San Mateo is known for being a leader in our REACH codes, and with the suspension of enforcement of some of our REACH codes, this really presented an opportunity for city council to consider a replacement. In terms of impact, new construction accounts for a small number of projects in San Mateo, but new construction is a priority. It is a very cost-effective time to encourage sustainable design. Absent the city's all-electric requirement, it is really difficult to estimate how many buildings would be constructed with natural gas. But we do observe, typically on the 3-year code cycle, that there's an uptick in applications that get submitted because builders are looking to lock in code requirements. So we're kind of anticipating a flurry of building permits next year in 2025. So for feedback, for larger multifamily and non-residential development projects that have approved planning applications but that do not yet have a building permit, according to staff that work with these developers, these projects are likely still planning to be built all electric regardless of the requirement. These types of projects take multiple years to design. And to get a little bit more feedback, staff hosted a developers roundtable in September on Zoom to get feedback on this exact ordinance. There were 6 attendees, including 5 developers and 1 real estate agent. And the top concerns were actually not related to the energy performance margins themselves. They were related to electric readiness requirements and space conditioning for buildings with life sciences and laboratories. We also learned at that meeting that one of the developers shared that their building already plans to be all electric with the exception of potential gas use for a commercial kitchen. So that's a little bit about multifamily and non-residential. It is much more difficult to understand trends in single family and duplexes. These are often smaller projects that are determined by each individual property owner, and it's also hard to solicit feedback from the specific demographic since we're only impacting new builds with this ordinance. So it's a small percentage of the permits that are related to single family and duplexes, and what we've observed is that the work is completed by a variety of builders and contractors, and it's not as easy to target compared to gathering feedback from multifamily and non-residential development. And then in previous years of outreach, because we've had REACH codes related to pushing for all-electric or sustainable design since 2020, the city often does not hear a lot of feedback on new construction REACH codes, and the approach that's contained in this ordinance actually adds more flexibility because we don't have that all-electric as a requirement. It's providing multiple pathways for compliance. And timeline-wise, the proposed ordinance is tentatively scheduled to go before City Council January 13th, 2025 at that City Council meeting. All right. So staff are still working with Rincon Consultants for the development of a building decarbonization strategy that's focused on existing buildings. In 2023, the project team completed the building inventory analysis, market segmentation study, and decarb policy analysis, but then the project was on hold for much of 2024 due to city staffing, and the team still needs to complete community engagement and development of the final sustainable building strategy for City Council approval. In early 2025, we'll be working on that outreach and engagement, and the project team anticipates presenting to the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission twice for review and once before the City Council for the Sustainable Building Strategy approval. And we're aiming for August of 2025, but really hoping to wrap up the work next year. And then at the same time, we'll be working on 2025 code cycle REACH codes to align with that January 1, 2026 code cycle update. And we'll aim to adopt the REACH codes at the same time as the building codes, so that's usually in fall, like prior to implementation. That means that the REACH code analysis and engagement is a priority for spring and summer 2025. Staff are already currently monitoring REACH code opportunities for the 2025 code cycle. I provided a bit more of that in my report. And PCE and their consultant TRC will continue to provide that REACH code support for cities, including providing a model ordinance and technical assistance. And so I provide this kind of as background to contextualize the discussion here tonight, which is focused on the proposed ordinance. So that concludes my presentation, and I've listed staff's recommendation here on the slide, but reviewing amendments to the San Mateo Municipal Code, Chapter 2324 of the Energy Code and 2370, the Green Building Code, to encourage sustainable new buildings and recommend approval by the City Council. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that thorough report. I'll start with questions and comments. Go ahead, Commissioner Robbins.
Yeah, we're going to do, I think we've kind of changed a little bit. We're now doing
I think we're back
and
to
comments together.
questions first and then comments.
We have one public comment on the
Oh,
topic.
I'm sorry.
Well, we're going to do our questions, then public comment, then come back to us again. Is that
Okay.
okay? All right. Thank you, Andrea. Good presentation. I've got a few questions. First, I'll just say I like the concept. I understand that it's driven by the Restaurant Association v. Berkeley case, which I've read that three-judge panel opinion was interesting. But it is what it is, and the net is that we do have these energy performance targets with different paths to meet them. In theory, anyway. So I think that does give developers, and we're talking single-family home folks, so people a chance to mix it up, if you will. One question, and I think you answered it after I read the materials, and I think your slide confirmed this, but I just like that if somebody wants to go mixed fuel, the only way they're going to meet those compliance targets is to have solar and a battery and probably increased insulation and a few other things. Is that true?
That is true. And I'm going to pull up the slide and then maybe also tap Farhad to kind of talk about, let's see, am I sharing the screen yet?
I mean, yeah,
Okay.
and that was my read. I
Okay.
just, so there's no way to go mixed fuel without what I guess I'd call enhanced electric, solar, battery.
That's correct.
Okay, well, it is what it is. Now, question, is our code, as the draft, is it based on the PC model ordinance?
Yes.
And are there any significant differences with that model ordinance, or we adopted whole cloth?
The one deviation, if you will, is the exemption of ADUs.
ADU exemption?
Yeah.
It's the only one thing, okay. And did we have any input, we the staff, city, with PC in their model code drafting?
No, we didn't influence the development of the draft ordinance, but then we're allowed the option to customize as we thought.
Right,
Which
but
fits
we
entail.
weren't, I'm a big fan of PC, and I know a bunch of people there, including former commissioner and several good friends. So they're a great group, but I'm also a little, I've had some experience with model codes in my years as a lawyer, and it would have helped, I think, if we actually had visibility into that process to give them a little bit of real world, but that ship may have sailed. So just that answers my question there. My other question is just, is there any, I hate to use the word simplified, but I will, a simple way of describing to us these the actual metrics necessary and the metrics themselves? I tried to read through, and at some point I got to where it kicked to a alternative calculation methods approval manual, and I wasn't willing to go there. But is there some way to describe those metrics and then the delta that is necessary to comply? You have to go, it says what, +9 or +13, but I'll be candid, I have no clue what that means.
Yeah, Farhad, I'd love to put you on the spot to talk about source energy and EDR.
Yes. maybe even start even a higher level than that. Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you so much for discussing this item tonight. My name is Farhad with TRC on behalf of Peninsula Clean Energy. There are 3 different EDR metrics used in all compliance methods. There's EDR1, which we're focusing on tonight, and then there's 2 versions of EDR2. EDR2 is comprised of efficiency and then demand flexibility. Those are the 2 components. And those are really focused at the building level and what the prescriptive budgets determine for efficiency, as well as solar and battery. EDR1, simply put, is a proxy for carbon emissions, GHG emissions. It's based on a 100-point scale. And that 100-point scale was developed so that California could measure their energy code compared to a national code known as the International Energy Conservation Code, IECC, where 100 represents that code back in 2005. Single family represents the only place where EDR is used at all. As Andrea noted, it's a compliance percentage used in multifamily and non-residential. That's kind of the simple approach there, a simple method. So a building, let's say, single family building that submits for a performance application would achieve a score of 35. The compliance margin that the building code official will be looking for will be 9 less than 35, so at least a 26. That's the margin that's going to be the difference that's going to be looked at there. But the builder will need to come with all of the metrics, not just the margin that San Mateo is setting for EDR1, but as well the EDR2 metrics that are set by the state.
Okay, thanks. That both helps and confuses, but I appreciate that. And I mean that in a positive way. That was very helpful. How will that work in practice? Developer, I'm deciding to build a new house, and my wife doesn't want to live in our 100-year-old rambling cottage. So we find some land, we build a new house. Is just the developer or our contractor going to have some engineer who's going to be able to dig down into this?
Yeah, I'll attempt to start to answer Farhad, but this is working within the existing process that builders have to use energy software to demonstrate compliance with the energy code. So this isn't adding a whole new process. It's actually just working within the existing software and forms that they would have to fill out anyway to comply with the energy code. And then they have to, on the implementation side, our staff have to look for a different number, the compliance margin. So I guess we'll have to do a little bit of calculations to see that 4%. But it's the same forms, it's things that builders and our staff are already familiar with.
So both the builder will have
already they already
visibility.
have to.
They'll have the equipment, the software to be able to measure, and then the staff, the permit person, whatever, the compliance officer who comes out and says, "Yeah, that's good," or "Wait, you didn't do this right." They will have similar equipment to be able to say, "Yeah, you dropped down by 9 from the standard," or whatever the right thing is.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I've burned up my time. I'll have some comments later. Thank you both for that.
Go ahead, Commissioner Kranz.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for your presentation. Hey, a couple of quick questions. Slide 9, enhanced electric solar. Is there a bias in place if the building is poorly situated for solar, if it would be not advantageous and would be economically disadvantaged to put solar in? Is there any kind of a bias for the EIR?
Farhad, I might ask you to answer this one.
Yes. So just to be clear, increased solar is not necessarily a requirement under this REACH code. And the state's energy code includes exemptions for things like shading. And you can demonstrate to the building official that your home should not be required to have solar, and you get credit for that type of exemption. So there is a compensation for lack of solar access as part of the compliance approach state code.
Perfect, thanks. If we could revisit slide 10, that's the very next one.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. It appears to be somewhat apples and oranges, perhaps. You have a all-electric standard house and then a mixed fuel, but it's got a battery, solar. Could you just revisit that real quick and just give me a better understanding of that slide?
Yes, so
One seems to be a cost, the other seems to be a savings. Is it?
Yes, let me talk through this slide again.
Sure.
So the goal of this slide is to show how a builder could meet the compliance margin. So the compliance margin for single family is 9 with different types of equipment.
Okay, that
And
makes sense.
so, yeah, the option on the left shows the all-electric home that very easily meets the compliance margin and actually saves money up front. And on the right, some of the symbols are attempting to demonstrate, that you get your gas equipment, you get your gas water heating and gas space heating, but to meet the source energy, the EDR1 compliance margin, you've got to save GHGs elsewhere.
Okay.
And so you do so with the increased solar and
Okay.
other efficiencies.
Because a gas water heater is relatively inexpensive. A heat pump water heater is relatively expensive. So I'm trying to understand, is this a monthly cost savings or is this an upfront installation cost savings?
What's shown on the slide is the upfront cost.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Slide 11. In that was there also, there you go. These are going to be for new homes, not retrofits, as I understand it. Was built into that metric the 200 amp service that would be required to power all these electric devices?
Sorry.
Okay, so if we're going to have charging for your car and electric water heater, heat pump for the room air, it requires a more robust service, both from PG&E up to the service lateral and the meter panel and the 200 amp service into the house. Is that calculus included in this?
Farhad, can you?
Yes. The electrical infrastructure that's required for new single-family homes per the current energy code, and actually since I think 2016's code, is a 200 amp panel. Mm-hmm. And that should be more than sufficient to provide all electric appliances to most homes, up to like 2,500 or 3,000 square feet.
Okay, and how many amps was that?
200 amps.
Oh, perfect. Yep, that makes sense. Okay. I think last question. It's more of a academic question. With what we've been experiencing recently with the grid, summertime, rolling blackouts, are we really prepared to make this leap into the future of electricity with the current grid that we have?
I think I'll also ask Farhad to help answer and talk about resilience.
Oh, be brave. Just get out there.
Yeah, no problem. I want to actually acknowledge the other consultants that were mentioned during this evening's presentation. Rincon Consultants has put together an explainer on grid reliability, which I will draw from in answering this question. I think there's two big points that I would touch on. One is that most outages from PG&E are driven by public safety power shutoffs. So these are in response to wildfire events. And San Mateo and the other urban areas in the county are not really affected by those types of outages as much as the more rural and mountainous areas in San Mateo County. And then the next most common power outages are system failures due to extreme weather or equipment failures. And exacerbating greenhouse gas emissions actually creates a feedback loop on those types of failures. Failures due to increased electric consumption resulting from electrification or electric vehicle charging are very, very, very minimal. And I think they've occurred only, because of too much demand from the grid, they've occurred only once since 2001 in PG&E territory. So it's not expected that electrification will be drawing so much power so quickly from the grid that it will cause failures.
Okay, I was biasing out of my question or out of view the wind-generated overhead power wire danger, is biasing that out. I'm just strictly looking at, in the summertime, you can get on PG&E's website and find out what meter block location is about to get blacked out for 2 hours. Not the end of the world. And just wondering, in addition to that, just the regular run-of-the-mill older equipment power failures we've been experiencing in the last 10 years. On the other end, on the front end of this, is PG&E picking up the pace to make a more robust grid? I know it's a very complex, we don't have all night, I understand. And I just wanted to put it out there that we are looking at this.
Sure.
I think the very, very last question, I know I said that was the last one. Hey, do you expect any additional cost, staff cost in terms of manpower with planning, building department, code enforcement? Do you expect any increased load on our already loaded system?
That's a great question, and I think it kind of calls back to what Commissioner Robbins was asking about when it comes to implementation.
Right.
These REACH codes are designed to fit within our existing implementation and enforcement of the energy code, and so we'll have a few staff trainings to make sure that everyone is really familiar with the compliance margins and the changes. But beyond that, we've been able to successfully implement previous REACH codes with our, within our current capacity, added support from myself and actually TRC Consulting, who had provided trainings as well.
Excellent. All right, thank you kindly.
Commissioner Rowinski, please.
Okay, I'm fortunate I had a chance to speak with Andrea and Taylor this morning for an hour, so some of my questions have been answered, but I'm going to also revisit them and a couple of new ones. So, Andrea, you mentioned that there are 6 local entities with energy performance REACH codes for the 202 code cycle. And 2 of the cities, Brisbane and Burlingame, are within the PCE jurisdiction. And so my question is their language similar or almost identical to ours?
Farhad, did you support Brisbane too? I know Burlingame's is the same. San Mateo County is also another one. And then it looks like Farhad's nodding, so confirming Brisbane also.
Okay, so they have, and there's a practical
and
reason.
East Palo Alto, sorry, just so that we're all.
Okay, so so the cities, and the reason for my question here is to some degree some efficiency for developers. So what I hear you saying is San Mateo County, Brisbane, Burlingame, East Palo Alto. Palo Alto?
Yes, but Palo Alto is not technically within PCE's boundaries.
Okay,
but
East PA
is?
East PA is?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. So the cities that are within PCE's jurisdiction, their decision was to incorporate the same language that the city of San Mateo is looking at.
That's correct. Okay.
And that's both in REACH codes and green building codes.
So the green building amendments were really specific to San Mateo because it's addressing our previous REACH codes. So the amendments were to the energy code for these other cities.
Okay, so they don't have green.
It depends on the city. It depends where they adopted their all electric new construction.
Right. Okay, and our only green code right now is the distance of an outlet from an electric appliance in both the kitchen and the laundry. Okay, all righty. And that's quite doable. Okay, so so those cities have similar languages within the jurisdiction of PCE. So then is it fair to make the assumption that of these 6 cities that have REACH codes for new construction, the other cities within the Bay Area don't? That is, they're relying currently on the California building code, in this case, the 202.
So we talked about 5 jurisdictions within San Mateo County. There are other jurisdictions within the Bay Area that have adopted an energy performance reach code. So
Right, and they could, their language could be different than ours because it wasn't supplied from PCE.
it could vary a little bit, or I'll let Farhad speak to that.
Of the cities that I'm aware of, and this includes Palo Alto, San Jose, and Santa Cruz at minimum, the language is structured very similarly. And actually, now that I think about Santa Cruz, is also the difference is the climate zone that San Mateo County is in versus where those other cities could be. And those change the percentages or the EDR margins.
Right.
But structurally and the nature of the requirement and the practical implications of the requirement are pretty much the same.
Right, okay. So like I said, I'm just looking for some developer efficiency here. And that's the genesis of my question. And I think both of you have answered it. Andrew, this was a question I sent to you, but I'm not quite sure it has much relevance. On the California Building Code, does it matter does it matter which part we are changing, part 11, part 6? Does it have any influence in what we put out there for what the language of our building, the new construction ordinance? Does it have any impact on that, or it's nominal?
So, yeah, you are noting that we are amending 2 different chapters of the California Building Standards Code. So specifically the Energy Code, Part 6, and Part 11, the Green Building Code. So what we're doing is making changes.
Those are the 2 parts that we're changing
state codes.
Using PCE language and being consistent with fellow cities here, at least in the county of San Mateo.
Yep.
If I was to kind of summarize that. Okay, answered that. Thank you very much. Let's see, would like to just go back to the September stakeholder meeting with the developer and the real estate agent. And I think some of this might have been answered in Commissioner Kranz's question. All of them obviously expressed concerns with costs. But there was one that you noted that one developer who expressed concern regarding electric-powered space conditioning for buildings with life science laboratories. And I have actually heard that concern from our clients. We work with life science companies here all over the world, and some of them are based here in the Bay Area. Is this a valid concern, or is this something the city can address or not address?
I think Farhad's a great person because he actually worked exactly on this issue.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for this question. So in nearly every circumstance, a gas space conditioner, gas furnace, radiators, they will always require a fan or a pump to electrically move that heat throughout the building. So even if you have a gas fuel source for the space heating, if a power goes out, you still will not be able to functionally heat your building. My understanding of the need for life sciences buildings is a source of backup power, and that's typically, that's currently typically a generator, but it can also be a battery. Those types of sources of backup power are not affected by this REACH code that's presented tonight. Right. However, the backup power may need to be larger in order to be able to accommodate electric space heating. So that's the one consideration.
Right, that's what I would concur to. Okay, yeah, it's going to be backup power. They're going to have backup power regardless, because based on the work that they're doing in these very high-end labs. And so what I hear saying is with a more electric building, the backup power is going to need to be bigger and last longer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Does that, Andrea, have you heard anything from businesses regarding the city of San Mateo being uncompetitive because it's expensive to do business here. Have you heard any of that in your reach out, or Farhad, you work with a lot of cities? Has anybody brought that to your attention?
Yeah, so speaking for the city of San Mateo, we have not received that feedback, and I haven't heard that feedback from staff who work more directly with the developer community than I do. And then I think we shared, a number of cities are adopting REACH codes across the region. So I think this is actually becoming a more common expectation.
Right. Farhad, do you have anything to add to that?
I will add that the California Energy Code's moving in the direction of supporting heat pump space heating for non-residential buildings. It was on one of the slides that Andrea presented. They're starting with offices and schools. These are large multi-zone types of systems that you would see in labs. I do expect that to continue in terms of other building types also coming under that type of requirement. But no, I haven't heard that type of concern around competitiveness specifically. I think that developers are always very concerned about costs, and that's going to be a pervasive concern. And I will note that there is an all-electric lab example, new construction in Newark, that is a predominantly laboratory area. I think it's mostly laboratory area and some office space, but they were able to make that work, and they do have backup battery power as well as on-site solar.
Okay. Anyway, I think it's a fair question to ask, Andrea, and I think you bring up a good point. As cities begin to adopt this, it starts to level the playing field, not only for developers, but for companies, because companies have to pay for this through rent or leasing or however. But yeah, it ultimately ends up with them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. And I do see that I had meant to open for public comment. So before I speak, I want to give a chance for the person waiting to make their public comment.
Robert White here.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. I've been before you before. I think you know that I have totally electrified my home as of 2 years ago. We took out everything. I had the fun of taking out the gas pipes myself. Doesn't sound like fun, but it was. I got out the pipe wrenches and pulled it all out. And PG&E did just a great job of getting rid of the meter. And for those who asked, they did not charge us for it. So we've been about 2.5 years without a meter, about 3 years without using gas. It had an expense, I can tell you what it is, of about $28,000, but that included panels, a battery, a hot water heater, a stove, and the furnace. It's doable. One of the things that I'd like to say to folks, those who can afford to do it, get on with it, please. Those who need help, let's find the help for them to do it, because PCE is offering quite a bit of money for that. I'm here on behalf of 350 Silicon Valley, San Mateo Climate Action Team, and Eldridge Climate Action. I am a member of the Peninsula Clean Energy Community Advisory Committee. I'm not speaking on their behalf, but I did want you to know that I am a member of that. The city took a very strong position years ago on REACH codes, probably one of the strongest REACH codes in the country, because it also included rehabilitation or retrofits of existing homes. It would require for a time that if you replaced an air conditioning unit, it had to be with a heat pump. It could not be with a straight air conditioning unit. It had to be the combination. San Mateo was one of the few cities to do that. I think Portola Valley also did the same thing. The pre-wiring and the EDR and all the things that are in the proposed ordinance are all really good things. But what it still does, it still allows gas. It still allows gas in the street. We're getting farther and farther away from getting rid of gas in our city. We really need to end gas. While the world is burning, we need to end gas. My request is here that, and I want to thank staff first before I go on for all the good work they've done on it. Whenever I've had a question, Andrea and the rest of the staff has been just excellent at answering our questions. And I see some of our concerns have made their way into the staff report. I really, really appreciate that. I just want to focus on 9.4 and 9.6, which are the two rules that Andrea referred to. Those take effect in 2027 for water heaters and 2029 for furnaces. They affect existing. They don't affect new, other than that you can no longer put them in. But I'm concerned, but the ordinance you have in front of you will allow people to put in gas equipment, and then have to have it in effect for another 15 years while it's going through its normal cycle. Well, I'm out of time. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm not a big fan of the ordinance. I know what it accomplishes. I wish we could do so much more. And I do want to talk about the city of Campbell and what they've done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any online comments?
Yes, we do. Mike Swire online.
Great, let's go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I just wanted to agree with everything Robert says. He knows his stuff, and wholeheartedly support everything he said. Second of all, I just had a quick question, and then maybe based on the answer, I can respond. I think at the beginning of the presentation, there was something said. I know reach codes usually deal with buildings, but did somebody say at the beginning of the meeting that reach codes can also touch upon transportation? That kind of piqued my interest.
Go ahead if you'd like to respond, Andrea.
Okay, yeah, I through the chair, if I may. So when I was mentioning that our REACH codes help address greenhouse gas emissions from buildings and transportation, I was really making the connection of enhancing electric vehicle infrastructure and making that more available throughout our community can help reduce those emissions related to vehicles. So hopefully that clarifies.
That does. Thank you for explaining that. And yeah, I would just explain, I just moved into an apartment actually in San Mateo, and it makes my life as an EV owner very difficult to find charging, whereas I used to have it in a residence. And I think when I look around the garage in the apartment, I see definitely not nearly as much penetration of EVs as I do on the roads or in single family homes. So anything you can do there, I think would be really helpful. I'm not sure what the solution is, but I just want to make sure you're aware of that issue. Thank you.
Is that it for our public comments?
That's all.
Great. I'm going to close our public comments and then bring it back to the commission, and I'll go first with a few questions. Thank you for the presentation. If you don't mind going to slide number 10. I was curious, in the slide, it says % of carbon savings. Is that actually estimated in the software, in the building software, or do we actually know what those savings are, or are those arrows like more hypothetical?
Farhad, can you talk about carbon savings?
Sure, yes. So the software does estimate these savings, and they are in a couple of ways not perfect for San Mateo, which is why we've reverted to these arrows, these directional arrows instead. It's important to note that PCE and PG&E provide 100%. Well, PCE provides 100% clean energy. PG&E for the first time last year provided, I think it was over 90%, 95% emissions-free energy as well across their territory. So electricity is largely clean for Northern California, but the software doesn't necessarily reflect that and has a statewide mix, which is why it becomes a little more nuanced to calculate. But to kind of extend on that point, space heating and water heating are the largest source of emissions in buildings. And we do feel that electrifying those will save a lot more GHGs than keeping those as gas. That's what we're trying to illustrate here. But we can share with you the software output numbers if that is helpful.
Great, thank you, Farhad. And Commissioner Narita did send me some questions, so just building off of that more, she was wondering, and Andrea did answer them, but just to bring it out to the public, if you could explain, how much of a reach are these REACH codes regarding greenhouse gas emissions? Like, what is the impact of them? And do we have an idea of estimates and how far they extend past, generally speaking, than existing building code?
Great, and I'll start to answer that and maybe let Farhad jump on a little bit, but it's a great question about, kind of relating what the source energy metric is, like what does that translate to for greenhouse gas emissions? And, I mentioned that source energy is a metric that is supposed to be a proxy for greenhouse gas emissions, but we can't use this compliance margin to say it's like a 1-for-1, like we're gonna see a 10% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions related to that particular building. So it's just a bit more challenging to quantify. I also shared with Commissioner Narita in my response that I'm hopeful through our efforts with RINCON and the Sustainable Building Strategy, the Electrify San Mateo work, that we're going to add a little bit more quantitative data to what these policy efforts can achieve.
Great. Did you want to add to that?
I will say that the software output results do show GHG savings, and I think that they're just on the order of 20 to 30%, if I'm going from memory here. So, we're looking at much north of that, and I think that RINCON consultants will be able to provide a much more accurate number for San Mateo.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Rowinski wanted to add to that.
Andrea, in the 2022 cost study, there are 2 or 3 tables that go in and talk about greenhouse reduction for each of the climate zones, and all electric and mixed. So I don't know whether that helps to answer the question being raised.
I think yes and no was the ultimate answer, because Commissioner Reid had raised very specific questions about San Mateo buildings, and I think Farhad kind of responded about the applicability of all of those tables.
Great, I think that's sufficient. Thank you. And this may be a question for Farhad, but just out of curiosity, do you know why gas stoves are not included in the energy software as a source to regulate?
That is a great question, and I wish there was a great answer for that. The reason that we understand it is because they're not bolted on appliances, and they are replaceable without a permit. And it is a statewide energy code issue where if you can unplug it and replace it without a permit, they feel that that is not a energy source that they can regulate. So these are called non-regulated loads. Now, I do think that the state energy code and the Energy Commission makes the rules for themselves, and I think that this is an area of future opportunity. But as it is today, these types of appliances, clothes drying included, are non-regulated loads, and they are not included in the process. In the compliance calculations.
Got it. Thank you. And Andrea, would you mind going? I think it was the second to last slide that compares the strategy with the code. Not this one. Keep going.
Not this one.
No. Keep going. Yeah, this one.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I think it's really important. I'm happy to see that you're going to be trying to align the sustainable building strategy with the code cycle and incorporating that in there. I was just wondering, is there a chance that we may not need a REACH code in the future? Like if the 2025 code cycle, or maybe even a future one, I guess, comes to a point that whatever the cities can contribute in REACH codes may just be really minimal for the amount of effort it requires?
Yeah, and I think the other slide actually about where the 2025 energy code is moving to for single family kind of gives us an indication how the energy code, the base energy code, is really moving towards electric as much as possible. I mentioned in my report 2 other options that start to touch on things more towards existing buildings. And so I think that will be a large topic of REACH code discussion for next year, but maybe we'll see a different type of REACH code for new construction, or maybe limited opportunities there.
Great, okay. Farhad, did you want to add anything to that, or all set? Okay, I'll listen.
Yeah, I can expound a little bit. So we think that the Bay Area Quality Management District standards will, on the long term, have a influence on the types of appliances that get installed. And yes, hopefully over time, we won't need reach codes. That I would love if that was the case. I think next year the opportunities for this type of policy that we're presenting today are going to be marginally smaller because what's presented to you tonight is essentially where the 2025 Energy Code is going. So the reach margin above that is going to be even slimmer and will only really be, will impact.
You're getting a little cut off, but I think we understand what you're trying to explain. Thank you. I think you're frozen, but no worries. I don't have any other questions, and I'll start with comments since I'm speaking, but overall, I think this is obviously comes from a need of the lawsuit, and we're going to do the best that we could with this new REACH code during this limbo period until the next building code update. So I would go ahead and support approving it for the City Council. But let me see if my commissioners have any other comments to add. Did you go ahead? Oh, sure, I'll let.
I do. I was going to suggest you start the other end.
I'll start with Commissioner Kranz if you don't.
I think these are really great, especially looking at our current state of how to make quality of life better and more sustainable. Puts the sustainability in the S&I Commission. But here's a question. If San Mateo was to achieve incredible efficiencies, no more gas, everything's electric, how would that, or would it affect our immediate quality of life? I think where I'm going with this is unless the national building codes, the NEC, the National Electric Code, Council of American Building Officials, the big national codes, and then after that, the worldwide codes, is this like throwing an ashtray off the Titanic? And is this really going to help? It's just an interesting question. I would be curious what your vision is.
Yeah, I think admittedly we're a small city but I think we have an opportunity to be a local leader on climate action, and REACH codes is one of the ways that we're able to do that. I think change needs to happen at all levels that you mentioned in order to achieve the kind of reductions we need to see on an international scale, but I think we can still do our part here.
Is that it? Thank you. Oh, did you have any other final comments?
I support this. I support, sorry?
Yeah, but just as a comment.
But yeah, I think I'm trying to understand the more global picture, and yeah, we're thinking globally and acting locally, and that's a really, really good thing. I think you might get a little bit more pushback from existing homes trying to retrofit folks. Where I live, and with some of the recent me getting out there amongst the folks, Shoreview and places like that, they're financially challenged to go to that. They don't have that much disposable income. That's when I've been on any of these public facing, meeting in a school. That's come up a lot. They don't know how they're going to do it. So we'll figure it out though. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rowinski, please.
So as a comment, the proposed ordinance is fine. But I want to talk a little bit about the future because I think that's going to be the big issue. And the how, I think, is going to be most important. That is how we work with our community and that all stakeholders, homeowners, renters, developers, companies, those in the disabled community, those in the senior community, we have to share this cost burden because it's going to be a lot for existing homes. And we'll see where that goes. But we have to figure out a way, one, that is shared by all, and it's not offset by one set of stakeholders at the expense of another. We're all in this pot together, is where I'm going with this. So the how how this is done, I think, is really critical. And then this goes back into engagement. I've been in contact with Christina on engaging the senior and disabled communities. And, you know, she mentions here the outreach plan includes in-person discussions at senior meal programs, places of worship, senior advisory commission. So she's got a whole host of plans for this community, the disabled and the senior. But we also need to expand that to everybody else. I'll call it the abled and the non-senior. So engagement, I think, is going to be crucial. The how is going to be crucial, and being open to people's suggestions that could change what staff is presenting. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Robbins?
Yeah, I've got to quick thank you to Commissioner Michael, who reminded me my Hebrew is very, very rusty, but the concept of tikkun olam, which is repairing the world, that's really the answer. You do your little bit, and you know, God knows what happens in the rest of the world, but we do what we can. Yeah, I support this. I have one issue, but I will. It falls squarely into what we do as a commission. We're not council, and we are certainly not staff or consultants and experts. And that's, I feel a little uncomfortable that I can't review intelligently the metrics, the base metrics, or the margins that we're talking about, and whether that really works or not. But I also recognize, as I hate to say it, an old commissioner, been on this and a couple commissions before, I recognize that it is not our job to be, am I causing that noise? Back away from the microphone? No. You know, it's not our jobs to be the experts, and so I'm going to have to just defer on that and say thank you to Andrea and to Farhad, and I support it.
Great, thank you. I think we're ready then to pass a motion. Would someone like to introduce it? Go ahead.
I'll move that we recommend passing this up to council.
Second.
Would you like to take a vote? A roll call vote?
Okay. Commissioner Robbins?
Yes.
Commissioner Kranz?
Affirmative, yes.
Commissioner Rowinski?
Yes.
Vice Chair Michael?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Great. Are there any other reports or announcements? Okay, with that, it looks like we can adjourn the meeting.